welcome to All Ready to Go. And what we're going to be talking about today is getting all ready to go at the end of our lives. We're going to be looking at what I call a death binder, which is my plans and my paperwork around the end of my life, which I'm encouraging all of us to do. I got two boys, their names are Oliver and Ben, and I don't want them to experience what I experienced when my father passed away. When my dad died, he was plugged into all kinds of machines and gizmos and noisemakers, and the doctor came up to me and said, "So, what do you think?" I didn't know what to think. I had no idea. We hadn't spoken about it. It wasn't planned. My dad was on life support, and the doctor was asking me, his eldest son, should I pull the plug or should I not pull the plug? My mom was there. What do you do? I had no idea what to do. I guessed. And the agony of guessing and making the wrong choice for my father was really hard on my heart. I don't want to visit that on my boys, so I've set something up called my death binder. And in it is my will, my representation agreement, who can speak for me should I not be able to speak for myself, my advanced care directives, what do I want them to say to the medical system on my behalf, what do I want, not want. Right behind that is my power of attorney, because the rep agreement handles only my medical business. My power of attorney handles my financial business. And there's a whole bunch of end-of-life plans and a whole bunch of other plans that goes on. Most importantly, for this talk, what is there as well is, what are my funeral arrangements going to look like? I'm going to have a really elaborate casket and a really elaborate ceremony. I'm going to have a cardboard casket, no casket. I'm going to be buried. I'm going to be cremated. So I've created an end-of-life plan or funeral service arrangements so that my boys don't have to worry about it, number one. Number two, so when my wife, I will likely predecease, goes to the funeral home, she knows what to speak about and she knows what to say. So she won't suffer necessarily the upselling that's typically common when you sit down with a funeral director. It's a business. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, it's a business. And so I like to be prepared. So with my brother, for example, when brother Peter died, he had it all laid out. He said, I want a cardboard casket, I want a plastic urn, and I don't want any big ceremonies. It's a cremation. If my wife wants to be there, so be it. That's all. So I went to the funeral home and I said to the funeral director, I'd like you to get a contract out. I don't want you to open the curtains behind which are all the caskets and all the urns. I want you to simply take down my request for my brother's end-of-life arrangements. He said, okay. I said, cardboard casket, basic cremation, plastic urn, wife present if she wants to be. And he said, there's nothing to, no, that's exactly what I want, please. No upselling, no pressure, just fill out the contract. So he filled it out, we signed it, and off we went. The reason I do this talk and talks like this is I want people to have that sort of power for themselves. So they don't walk into a funeral home and be confused or pressured into buying things and services that they don't really need. The reason that happens is because we don't talk soon enough about end of life. We don't get prepared for it. At the Memorial Society BC, we want people to be prepared. We help them with their paperwork and we hold their plans for them on file. So when death does come, they phone us and say, hey, mom's died. She's at the such and such hospital. Can you take care of it? We just thank them. We phone the funeral home that we've pre-selected for them. We call, give them the information, it's all taken care of, and they walk through the plan. So the family doesn't have to be disturbed in their grief process with all the mundane details of the arrangements because they've already made them. It's a very important thing to do as far as I can see, because it doesn't interrupt the natural immediate grief that we all suffer when a loved one dies on us. You think you can be prepared. I thought I was ready for my brother's death. We had 6 years to be prepared for his death. When he died, it was shocking to me how unprepared I felt. Thankfully, we had a plan to walk along. We had a whole bunch of things to do that we could just follow. So I didn't have to worry or ponder because I couldn't. I was dead in my frontal lobe. I was very much alive in my emotional center. It would have been hard for me to make good decisions based on my emotionality. And I didn't have the executive director at home. So that plan that he created for us, we just walked along. It was very graceful. And there was no room for upselling and unnecessary purchases that perhaps would have happened had I not been prepared for my brother's funeral arrangements and had his wife not had somebody who was ready for it. The reason I got involved in this work was when I was a cremationist, I noticed that $5,000 or $6,000 or $10,000 caskets I was burning. And I thought to myself, that doesn't make any sense to me. I wonder if
they can't use them twice, right? Like if you
That's
get
correct.
a casket and they just show somebody and then they cremate that person, they can't sell it to somebody else.
Nope. They do have rental caskets,
Oh.
which you could ask for, with a cardboard casket liner, which you pull out of the rental casket. But it's still expensive because you're renting a casket, and it's unnecessary. These are things that people don't know when it comes to end of life. They don't know that you don't need to be embalmed. It's not necessary. It's not a legal requirement. It's a choice. And if your body's being moved from Canada to the USA, for example, then you must be embalmed. But if you're just going from the hospital to the funeral home and then into the ground or into a crematorium, you don't need to be embalmed.
They
So-
only embalm, like if you do have to cross the border,
Yep.
or if the family wants a viewing.
Yep.
And then I think that families need a lot more counseling on that because then they go to cremate them. They only embalm them if you want a viewing.
Yep.
And that's only and then you buy the casket and the embalming and then you cremate. It goes even farther than that. I have a real concern because I see now that the families are so small and broken up that when they cremate somebody and then these ashes travel around for a little while, all of a sudden there's urns and storage bins. Like there's even some laws where you can't put an urn, but people sneak them in these.
See, all these concerns you bring up, which are very valid. What do we do with the ashes?
Yeah.
Who gets them?
Well, there was a little battle over ashes in
You
one
bet.
family where the woman had more than one father for her children, and the kids start fighting over the ashes, and all of a sudden they start getting busted up and putting little pendants and different things. But
If we plan for it, though, if the family sits down and says, okay, so Dad's dead, we're going to cremate him, how are we going to dispose of his ashes? Would you like some? Would you like some in an urn? Would you like some in a pendant? Should we put some in the Yukon River? My brother's spread all over Canada. He lived in Nova Scotia, so some of his ashes are there with his family.
and some of the local natives have a real problem with people doing that in their
Yep.
land.
Yep.
And I'm gonna say, many of them do.
Yeah.
They feel that there are spirits here of those people that are so lost.
And this is the challenge of end of life.
And they're affecting us.
Yeah. It's a
That
challenge.
These ashes are just out there and they're lost. They're like lost souls is what our people are treating them as now
Yeah.
because their ashes are.
This is
their
one of the
spirits are broken.
this is one of the things about death and dying. So we have Spanish culture from Colombia, we have Caucasians, we have First Nations. We all have very different approaches to end of life. How do we help do the dance together so that each of our preferences can be honored? You know, it's a really interesting challenge because we all have such different
It's
ways.
called The Sociology of Death.
Mhm.
And it's a real short little book. It's really skinny, but what it talks about is how people kind of get brought into the economy of death.
Yep.
And their emotions are preyed on and they end up spending elaborately, you know, because you want to show them that honor of looking at them one last time.
Yeah.
You know, the person doesn't feel it that you're not looking, and they don't look the same anyway.
Yeah. Because they're not in their body.
No, their spirit isn't there, but
That's
anyway,
correct.
the embalming only has to happen if they're being viewed, but a lot of people don't know that if they wanna view the body, then they have to embalm the body.
Actually, legally, that's not true.
No?
Nope.
Oh. I
The,
thought they
it's
did.
it's said that it would be preferable that you embalm your loved one. It's a $600 fee, give or take. It's not necessary that they be embalmed, though, for a viewing. What the embalming does is it takes all the body fluids out of the body and it replaces it with formaldehyde. And so the body gets a little more puffy and looks a bit more alive, which I think is quite silly because they're very dead. And so embalming for me is quite harsh. And I won't go through the exact details, but
It's for the living, not the dead. So are the
I understand.
funerals.
I understand. And sometimes we need to see the dead body as it is, not as we've dressed it up. When I was little, I was 9 and my Grandpa Joe died. He had makeup on and he was embalmed, and you know, I couldn't understand as a child, like, how come Grandpa's got makeup on and how come he's so
That's
puffy?
definitely scary.
It was scary,
That
and
was scary.
and the adults didn't say to me, and it would have been simple. I touched his face because he was my grandpa, like he's my special grandpa, you know. And so I touched his face, and he was cold. I said, "Why is Grandpa cold? You shouldn't be touching him." I said, "Why has he got a tie on? Grandpa Joe never wore a tie." And what's he doing with makeup on his face? He never had makeup on his face. All these things went on because that was what the funeral business did. It might not have been necessarily what my family wanted. And so this is why it's so important to do end-of-life planning. What does my family want? I know for me, I want to be in a cardboard box. I do want to be cremated. I want my ashes in an urn made for me by a friend who makes beautiful pottery urns. And I want my wife and my boys to do what they need to do with my ashes. If they need to keep them at home on the mantle, whatever they want to do, they can do whatever they want to do. But that's what I want, and that's what I've got organized. So my boys don't have to worry about that. It's all taken care of. It's all planned. It's not prepaid, but it's prearranged. It's important. The other important thing is when I spoke with my boys about my end-of-life planning, they don't want to think about me dead. I'm their dad, for goodness sakes. But it helped them realize that one day I will be. And maybe we should spend a bit more time with Dad instead of at the bar drinking. That was the result of it, was they realized that one day I am going to be gone. And so maybe we should cherish our time together a bit more deeply. And that's one of the side benefits of planning our end of life, is that we realize, whoa, there's no permanence here. I will be dead one day, and maybe I should value more deeply my aliveness today. Because if we forget about death, which we do in our North American culture, we push it away, then we also push life away. So one of the benefits is it brings life to this beautiful, crisp place. Like, I don't know whether I'll be alive when I get home. I might die on the highway. I don't know. But right now I'm alive with you all. We're having this wonderful conversation about end of life and being well prepared. I think as a parent, it's my responsibility to demonstrate to my children what dying well means to me, so that they don't have to make those difficult decisions that I had to make for my father and for my mother. It was very difficult. I mean, imagine being a 27-year-old guy and you got to choose, do I unplug them or do I leave them plugged in? What happens if they come up with a cure the next day for the illness my father had and I've pulled the plug out? Oh my goodness, it's a tough decision to make. And I didn't have those conversations with my family, so I didn't really realize that my dad was going to die. I mean, we all know it, but it wasn't spoken clearly.
Especially if someone has a progressive condition that they know.
Yep. So having those conversations early, then when death does come, everybody's on the same page and the decisions have been made. When it's happening like concurrently with the death or the dying process, it's very, very difficult.
It was the dying process.
Yeah,
So
very difficult.
even
And
worse.
it causes tremendous strain in a family. Rather have that conversation earlier, and let's have the upset. Let's have the discussion. Let's really rumble with it.
Have the raging
Let's
debate.
get it out. It's all on the table. Okay, good. Everybody said their piece? Awesome. Take a deep breath. Now, what's best for Dad? It's not about us. What's best for Dad? And let's have that conversation. Let's get the plan in place. Let's organize the end of life so it happens in a dignified way that includes everybody's input and makes the best decision. Once the decision's made, we all got to cop to it. We've all got to agree that, you know what, we've decided. When it goes, it's going to go this way. And we've got to leave all the fighting aside, because the time to do the fighting is when everybody's clear and conscious and present. Let's do it. Let's have a good old rumble and then get down to business.
So are you suggesting then that the family make this, or you do that? Like,
Family.
So
I will help families make the decision. I'm not making it.
You are, say, my book.
Yep.
Are you suggesting that that be done with the family?
You bet. You bet.
But
I know,
you
and
do it
judging by the
as
rolling
agent,
of your eyes,
right?
like, holy cow, that's an undertaking.
That-
Yes, it is.
Just getting them all in one room would be.
I know.
But
I know.
as an agent, don't you kind of put the meat together first? and
I
then
help
just
them with
run
it.
by? No, but I mean, her, like if she's doing her book, or myself, if I'm doing my book, I'm the agent.
Yep.
I'm the decision maker, but you're my family who are part of me, and I love you, and I want you involved in that.
Yep. I would provide.
That's my agency.
I would provide the
That's my
process, but I'm not going to be involved in the decision making. That's not my role. That's the family's job. I'll guide them, I'll support them, I'll help them have the conversations.
But what she's asking, it's not the whole family, it's the person that's gonna die with their family.
Ultimately,
That's
yes.
what you're talking about.
Ultimately, yes.
As an
But if they're unable to speak and articulate, then there's a whole legal ranking of who has the power. The husband, the firstborn child, the secondborn child, the thirdborn child. There's all kinds of legalities around it. Best to have those conversations, though, when everybody's present around the table. And just have it out. Just have it out.
Clinical kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. It's really, and it's a difficult conversation.
You don't wanna deal with in times of dynamic emotions like the death is there.
When death is happening, boy, it's crazy making, so let's be ready well in advance. And there's some young folks here. I mean, why would you?
I come from a family of 20 siblings.
Wow,
17 of us grew up together.
wow.
And there's 10
That's a
of
lot
us
to get
left.
around the table.
There's 10 of us left, and we lost our mom in the meantime.
Yeah.
And when we lost our mom, this is when I actually learned about this
Yeah.
this thing. That, you know, it was really strange because at times of death, people can get weird. My
Alright.
oldest brother didn't
Excuse me,
wanna let
excuse me.
us-
I need to wrap up the talk. I hate to cut you off,
No,
but
that's fine.
times of death, to accent your point, will bring up our very, very best
Yeah,
and our very, very worst,
that's right.
all at once at the same time. And sometimes the best comes from you and the worst comes from this fine young man back here, or vice versa. But it does bring up our very, very best and our very, very worst, and we need to get that handled early in the process so that we can have a dignified ending.
Mhm.
So suffice it to say, it's a challenging piece of work to do. But once you've got it done, when my boys and I sat down with my wife and my family, and they got what I want and what I don't want, and there was this like, oh, it's done. Can we get back to life? Absolutely. The plan is made. And now every 5 years, my family and I review it to make sure it's still current for me and that they're still aware of what I want and what I don't want. And it's taken the edge off the struggle that's going to come, perhaps, when my end of life does come.
So is it only yours that you did in your family, or is everyone?
It's mine,
of them doing?
my wife, my mother-in-law, and my father-in-law. We all live together. I'm encouraging my boys to begin theirs. They're young, they're 24 and 26. So they need to begin to think about their end of life, because it may happen quicker than they think, you know? And so that they might be ready, because they've got cars and guitars and all kinds of assets that would need to be given to somebody.
Yeah.
So even when we're younger, to start the planning process is important to do. But most importantly for me was, get the death binder ready, then share it out loud with my family at a meeting so everybody can hear and everybody's on the same page and everybody can have their concerns or their upsets or their additions or their deletions to my plan. What won my boys over was I said, boys, I've got a life insurance policy at the back that's going to fly you and my wife to India because I want some of my ashes put in Varanasi in the Ganges River. And the boy said, it's paid for, Dad? I said, yep, it's paid for. And they went, oh, that's so cool. When are you going to die? So it kind of took the edge off a little bit. It added a bit of humor to a difficult conversation because humor is important. Death is a daunting task, but it doesn't mean we can't have a little bit of fun in preparing for it. We can have a bit of humor with it. So I've got a few gifts for y'all, which I'll be very happy to give to you as just thanks for being here to sit with me and talk about a very difficult topic. I'd like to thank Michael, our videographer, for taking the film, and wish you all well with your death and dying. If there's any way I can help you at all in your planning, I'd be very glad to do that for you. So thanks for coming. Appreciate it.